Hello, art historians, and we are back with our next selection of art and our next unit, West and Central Asia. And so what I want you to think about when we're doing West and Central Asia is I want you to think about, we're talking about Jordan, we're talking about we're talking a little bit about Iran. We're talking about Saudi Arabia. Those are the areas of the world that we're talking about. So we'll be doing a little bit of Buddhism, but we'll get a lot more Buddhism when we do Southeast and Southeast Asia. We're going to be doing a good portion of Islam, and so we will do Palestine. We will do some a little bit of North Africa, and those areas of the world. So that's what we're talking about. Modern day Iran. That's what we're talking about when we're doing West and Central Asia. And so we're going to break this into 3 videos. And this first video is going to be a couple of different sections. And then the next couple of videos will sort of be a little more. The first set of videos has to do with Petra and the Nabateans, and then a little bit of Buddhism. And then the last 2 videos will be mostly Islam. All right, so let's talk about what we're looking at here. So when we think about the Near East, we're really thinking about really this area of the world in through here. We're going to do Arabia. We'll do what's called the Holy Land. So Palestine, Israel. We'll do some of a little bit of this area in here, Iran, Iraq, that sort of area. We have to think about the fact that the major trade route that runs through this area used to be called the Silk Road. And when we're thinking about the Silk Road, we really need to think about the fact that some art was going in some directions and some art was going in other directions. And why do I say art? Because I teach art, but other materials were also going in various directions. So what you have to think about is over here in China, we were seeing a lot of silk and ceramics. In the, Iran, Iraq, this area over here in Arabia, we're seeing a lot of metalwork. And so, some of the metalwork and spices from this area would go this way, and some of the ceramics and spices from this area would go that way. And the path of the Silk Road is really important to the study of West and Central and Southeast Asia, because it sort of makes us think that this whole part of the world was connected far, far back simply because there was a need for certain things in certain places. This Silk Road is what is typically used in AP World and AP Euro as a way to describe sort of the trade patterns or the trade paths that materials would take. And so when we're looking at this area of the world, we're going to start with our first group of people, and we're going to start with the people who are called the Nabateans. And what Nabateans means is nomads. They were a nomadic tribe that lived in what is now modern day Jordan. And they were influenced heavily by the Greeks and the Romans, and a little bit by the Egyptians. And so what's interesting about the Nabateans, and particularly the settlement here at Petra, is that while they were a vastly nomadic people, they they set up Petra as a central city so that the majority of their people could be nomadic. But this was a major city built on the caravan route and on the Silk Road, and allowed them to have sort of a gathering place for the nomadic peoples. So we're going to go forward. I'm going to show you this. It's possible that this vision of Petra, you may have actually seen before. They use it in the Indiana Jones movies. This is actually the scene of the image from Petra that is most common to people if they know any of the images. The other very common image is, let me see. Yeah, this image here, which is sort of like this very cool curved hallway they have. So let me go back to the beginning here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Nabateans and what we're looking at here. So as I said, you have three images. This one is called the Great Temple. And as we're looking at it, you should definitely think that this looks a little bit like the ruins of Persepolis. And yeah, they're not far from each other. And so it's not unusual that they would sort of look similar. So you're looking at Nabatean, Ptolemaic, and Roman. Ptolemy meaning Ptolemaic, the sort of Greek Egyptians, and Roman. So you're looking at Greek and Roman influence. You're looking at a complex that is made from cut sandstone rock. One more time. There we go. And what's interesting is this complex was constructed between 400 BCE and 100 CE, and then was abandoned and not discovered by archaeologists until 1812. Now, other people that lived in this area in Jordan definitely knew where this was. It wasn't found by Western archaeologists, though, until 1812. What's interesting about Petra is it is also often called the Rose City because the sandstone that's here is like a pinkish sandstone. And so everything has sort of like this pinkish tinge to it. They were able to, kind of like the Mayans, so we're always looking for ways to, not the Mayans, the Incans, we're always looking for ways to compare to other groups, kind of like the Incans. They were able to create elaborate water channels and running water here. They had lots of pools and baths. They had lots of cisterns for water collection. So like the Incans at Machu Picchu, we are dealing with the Nabateans who had, wonderful skills for channeling and collecting water. We also have an area of the world that is particularly prevalent to earthquakes. So a lot of the damage that you see here that is done to Petra was done actually by earthquake damage because it sits on a fault line. When you're looking at Petra, you will realize that that the art appears to be similar to other art. We see a similarity to the Greeks, we see a similarity to the Egyptians, we see a similarity to the Romans. And what we see here is their ability to not just copy the art of others, but to take the art of others and adapt it to use for their own purposes so that it has a particularly Nabatean feel to it. So Petra ends up being a city, their major city, the city that is built on a caravan route, like I said. And what's interesting is Petra allows them a place to create tombs and bury some of their dead. And so through the use of art historians and archaeologists, we know that there are about 500 royal tombs cut into the rock, and that they buried some of the dead in these rock-cut tombs. But there were no human remains found here when this section was found by archaeologists. And so we're not really sure about their burial practices, but we do know from the people who knew of its existence that that was definitely considered the royal tomb. So what you see here is what is called the Great Temple. If you remember what Persepolis looked like with its bowl capitals, there have been the remains here at Petra of elephant head capitals. Very cool. There are two sections to this temple, which is similar to some of our Egyptian construction. There appears to be a small sacred part of the temple in the background, which you can see way back here, and then a larger open worship place for the public. Again, this is usual for Egyptian worship. It's not uncommon in Greek worship either. So we have, civilizations that have similar temple constructions. The idea of entering into a large gathering area and then having a small cella in the background for the arrival of the god and the most holy of the worshipers, the priests and the nobility is what we see here. It's hard sometimes to see what you're looking at, so I try to include pictures that help put things into perspective. That's a person, that's a person. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. You can see how small they are in contrast to how large this particular temple area is. 65,000 acres. I always try to, get you to use your local area for comparison. And so if we're thinking that the average house off of Sweepstakes or Preakness sits on 1/4 of an acre, that's 260,000 houses. I mean, we're dealing with a huge, huge area that is covered here by the Nabateans. So that's the Great Temple area meant for worship. When we go in, you can see, this is not an AP image, but I like to show it to you. You can see that we have streets here. There's a sacrificial palace. We see multiple monuments. We see some things that, like, this is clearly what appears to be a triclinium, so like a dining area. We see royal tombs here. We are able to see unfinished tombs here. Here's that grand temple where we just were. There's lions, winged lions, like the what do you call those people? Come on, guys, help me out here. Like the Assyrians, like our Lamassu. We see all kinds of really interesting creations. And then what I want you to see is sort of how there seems to be this odd area. It is often called, what do they call that? It's like the shaft. It's a passage of tall, tall walls that once you come through the path, through the shaft, we're not exactly sure what it's for, you sort of dump out into the larger complex. This is a horrible picture, and it is the AP picture, and I have been unable really to find a better quality of this particular picture. In case they give it to you, I want you to have it. You're standing here on the ruins of the temple, looking into the tombs and things that are cut into the sandstone wall. So there's that rock wall there, and you can see the entrance into the rock cut tombs. So your theme here is city planning. So like Persepolis, like Machu Picchu, like the Agora, we have a very clear construction plan of what this particular city is going to look like. Even though the majority of Nabateans are nomadic, this is sort of the royal city where the people could be buried and where there could be gatherings, festivals, meetings, important governmental things. Okay, it takes more than a day to visit all of the sites because it's made up of the famous, what we call the monastery and the treasury, which we haven't looked at, but it goes for miles and miles beyond that. There's really cool parts called the Lonely Cave and the Silk Tomb, and it takes a really long time to get there. Just sort of visiting the monastery itself is an hour, and it's a huge complex. This is called the treasury. It is also called Al-Khazna. And what's interesting about this and what this would have, what we're looking at here is we're looking at, and again, for perspective, those are people there. And so what you're looking at is a really interesting construction of a temple, in that you have some sort of Greek influence at the bottom with your, Corinthian capitals, and then you have your pediment at the top, but it's just specifically what we call a broken pediment, where it doesn't come to a complete triangle there, and also a very broken pediment here, part of the pediment here, part of the pediment here, but with this interesting semicircular niche here. So, we're looking at the columns are not proportionally spaced like they are in Greek. They're meant to be off-center like that. There would have been a statue of a god here and a statue of a god here. Then you have some bas-relief here and here, some more statues here and here, and a statue in the center. And so you're looking at Greek temples, but with a little bit of Roman influence and some Egyptian influence as well. And so you're looking at a group of people who, through their course of trade, would have been influenced even in their construction styles by other cultures and worked them in. So this central thing here, this little sort of half circle niche, is called a tholos, Tholos, and that is that circular shrine that's right there. And so you see some bas-relief of gods sculpted in here. We realize that there are sitting here, you can see the marks for carving this completely out of the rock. So you're looking at was a rock face, just a straight rock face, and then they carved into, so subtraction. And on the front here, there are representations of Greek and Egyptian and Assyrian gods, which is, like I said, indicative of their borrowing of tradition from other places. And you can see that this rock did stick out, and then they were able to carve a little bit further and further and further in to build this into the side of the wall, into the side of the mountain. What's even more interesting is as you go in, this gives you that perspective again of how big the walls are, and the doors. They hollowed out this whole area. This was the mountain. And they hollowed that out and made it into rooms and tunnels so that you could go in. Treasury. Did we know for a fact that what they stored here in the treasury? We do not. We do know that it's huge. There are rooms that are connected by paths, and it is typically called the treasury. We can see these really beautiful doorways with these wonderful lintels, and you can see the mark of the stone where you can see that what is called dressed stone, where they carved really straight, beautiful walls into these rooms of these winding passages into the side of the mountain. This is called the monastery, El Dir. And again, this is what we believe was used for religious purposes. And when you look at it, again, we see the influence of what appear to be Ionic columns. We see sort of this influence of sculptural niches here. And then we see that broken pediment again at the top with that circular tholos or Greek shrine there. But then we see these odd, almost squarish columns back here. And you can see in this beautiful image of the construction, you can see how they cut into the walls of the mountain and then carved these beautiful shapes. That gives you, again, perspective of how big these areas are. There's also a theater here at Petra, and there are huge channels of water and sewage. They were able to control flooding, and they use dams and cisterns. And a cistern is a place where you can store water during like a rainy season or a flooding area, and then you can use the water during times of drought and things like that. And so, it's really important that we see that this is an early civilization without really a full language maybe that we understand, but we also do know that they were incredibly intelligent and inventive with their construction. Okay. So the next two pieces we're going to do are Buddhist pieces, and we'll talk a great deal more about Buddhism when we get into Southeast and Southeast Asia. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about Buddhism before we do this. So when we're talking about Buddhism, we're talking about a religion that was developed by someone whose name is Siddhartha Gautama. And we now know him as the Buddha. He was a philosopher, he was a meditator, he was a teacher, he was a religious leader. He is considered the founder of Buddhism, and is worshipped by most Buddhists as the enlightened one, who was able to remove himself from the cycle of karma, where you die and reborn and die and reborn and die and reborn. He is able to transcend the cycle of karma and become enlightened. Okay, and he is able to achieve what is called nirvana. What's interesting about Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, is that he was a prince, and he lived in this super luxurious life. And as he was traveling by carriage one day, he saw poor people, and he realized the extent of his privilege, and he rejects his life as a prince and goes out to seek enlightenment. He lives a very strict life with very little food and very little personal possessions or anything, and he rejects sort of life in general and sits and meditates and thinks about, the place of people on the earth and the various things that need to be done, and he escapes the Buddhist concept of death and rebirth, life, death, and rebirth, and when you escape that process, it is called that you have reached nirvana. He's considered to be the person who helps to figure out how to become that, to reach that nirvana. I like that. He was not, nor did he claim to be a god. He did not say he was a god. He was just a man who taught the path to enlightenment. I should probably go back and figure that out. So the basic concept in Buddhism can be summed up with the idea of the Four Noble Truths. Okay, the Four Noble Truths are: life has suffering. Okay, that's the first one. He doesn't try to tell you anything else. That there is a cause to suffering and there's an end to suffering. And to end suffering, you have to go on this eightfold path. And so there is suffering, there's a cause to suffering, there's an end to suffering. And in order to end suffering, you have to walk the eightfold path. And so here's the eightfold path. You reach these, and you don't have to know all of this by heart, but you sort of need to have the idea of it. So, life is suffering, and there is an end to suffering as long as we follow this. So we have a right to understanding and a right to, you have to have the right understanding and the right intention. You have to speak things that are right, not the right way, like in the correct language, but that things that are morally right. You have to act in a way that is morally right, and you have to live in a way that is morally right. And with your meditation, you must use the right effort and the right mindfulness and concentration. So to become wise, you have to understand and have the right intention. To become moral, you have to speak, act, and live in a moral way. And to focus your meditation, you must have the right effort, mindfulness, and concentration. And if you can do all these, then what you can do is you can escape the karmic path of death, life, and rebirth. We're going to talk a lot more about this as we go through other pieces, but we're going to talk about later mudras, which are hand gestures that sort of tell you what the Buddha is doing when he is holding his hands in a certain way. This is the most common one when we're doing pictures of the Buddha, one with the hand up and one with the hand down, and that's the teaching Buddha. And that's the one that we'll see the most often. And we'll talk about these when we get into Southeast and Southeast Asia. Okay, is there anything else I want to talk about? Okay, we're going to go backwards, and we're going to go to our first Buddhist image. All right. So this is one of only two images that we do of images of items that have been destroyed. This is called the Bamiyan Buddha. It is in Bamiyan, Afghanistan. It was created by the Gandharan kingdom and created sometime between 400 and 800 CE. In 2001, the Taliban filled it with dynamite and destroyed it. And so this is what it looks like now. It looked like this with its face removed. It was removed in 1847 by Muslims who believed that it is, what's the word I want? I just forgot the word. I used it. Sacrilege, blasphemous, because they don't, the Taliban and the Muslims that did this did not believe that this was, it wasn't, because it wasn't Muslim, it was a false idol, and so it needed to be destroyed. So in 1847, Muslims that lived in the area took the face off of the Bamiyan Buddha, and then in 2001, they completely exploded the Bamiyan Buddha. So it doesn't exist anymore. It's surrounded at the bottom by a pile of debris and broken pieces. So why do we do it? Well, I think the AP curriculum has it in here because it was the world's largest standing Buddha until its destruction in 2001. And what's interesting is that it's located on the Silk Road, and it was cut into the rock face. You can see that it's cut into a niche in the rock face. And it was carved in such a way so that it looked like there was a little halo behind the Buddha. And I'm going to use this one for a second, this image, because this is a really nice drawing from I don't remember when it's from, 18 something, clearly prior to 1847, because it still has the face, the early 1800s. And so when we're looking at this image of the Buddha, there's the grand Buddha, and then there's a smaller Buddha, and we'll talk about that one in a second. But you can see that it's carved into a little niche in the rock face, and it's carved so that it looks like it has a halo behind its head. It's also called a mandorla. That's on your vocab sheet. So that little halo that shows the Buddha's, the fact that the Buddha has achieved enlightenment. So when we think about this, we can see a lot of interesting pieces here. You see all those little squares here, all along the rock face, and here and over here. So this is actually a series of tunnels and stairwells that would allow Buddhist monks to go in here down by the Buddha's feet, climb up these stairwells and through these passages these are all like rooms where monks could go and stay to live and pray and meditate and practice Buddhism. And so it's very interesting that, you have these entrances and stairwells and channels and tunnels out into all of these rooms. So it's a huge, huge undertaking. It is used in the Buddhist definition of the perfect proportions. So we've talked about this, that there are, the canon of proportions for the Greeks and the Egyptians. Buddhists also had a canon of proportions. And so you can see that the tallest one, he's 175 feet tall, painted red, and he's in the Vairocana position, which means the universal Buddha, where he's, worshiping or not worshiping, administering and teaching and instructing. Okay, and so when you see these sort of folds and stuff like that, you get some of that through the construction of chiseling the stone out. So this is subtractive, but there were also points where they would take giant pieces of rope. I'm going to scroll back a little bit. They would take giant pieces of rope and bring the rope down and put mud over the rope to give it more of a texture. So they would actually sort of turn it into a mud brick, like adobe. It's very, very cool. You can see here these rooms where the monks could live, all the way up in here. And so here's some more of this is a picture by the College Board. You can see all of the tunnels and the rooms for the monks to pray. So as we're looking at this description, when you're looking at what are considered the perfect Buddhist proportions. And excuse me, a little bit of a yawn there. And so, we're looking at beautifully constructed. There are over 750 caves in here. There were water channels built for drainage and rain protection so that during the rainy season that there would not be damage done to the Buddhas. There's a ton of details here, as I said, that was sort of mud mixed with straw and coated with more mud to sort of make a stucco and give more of a dimension to the Buddha. The smaller Buddha is 125 feet. He's called the East Buddha. And he's in what is called the Sakyamuni position. We'll talk more about that when we do Buddhism in Southeast Asia. But the Sakyamuni position is the historical Buddha. So here we have the universal Buddha, the Buddha that is for everyone and can teach Buddhism. And here we have the historical Buddha, which is in the position of like the history of Siddhartha Gautama and his teachings. This was a masterful construction, and I cannot express to you how masterful the construction is until I say to you that basically what you're looking at is, this Buddha here. It was threatened by the Taliban in 1997, early in what ends up being eventually sort of like the results of Islamic extremism. So in this area of the world, and so some extreme Islamic believers, the Taliban, in 1997 threatened to take apart the Buddha. They thought that it was safe, and when I say they, I mean UNESCO, United Nations, education, arts protection group. They and UNESCO thought it was going to be okay, and then in 2001. Another group of the Taliban came into this area in Afghanistan and drilled holes and filled the Buddha with dynamite. And over the course of a month, it took them a month to fully destroy the Buddha down to this way that you see it here, where there's nothing. What's interesting is you can see that there were even holes for the monks up even here at the top. So the monks could have come out at the top here. And so because they were considered idols, they were destroyed. And this is, one of those times that we talk about how extreme religion, and we will talk again about this when we do Pacific, extreme religious beliefs often cause people to do things that are really awful. So extreme Muslim beliefs, not the beliefs of all Muslims, but extreme Muslim beliefs led to the destruction of this amazing Buddha, the same way that extreme Christian beliefs led to the destruction of many very, very important Oceania pieces of history because they believed that the gods of Oceania were blasphemous. So we see a lot of examples of how extremism in any religion is used to destroy art. So I think that's why they include this piece in the AP curriculum. And also because it was, until its destruction, the largest standing Buddha in the world. What's interesting is UNESCO has kept all of the pieces of the Bamiyan Buddha with the hopes that one day it could be put back together. So they have collected all of the broken pieces. And so they're hoping that when this area of the world is calmer and tensions are not as high, there might be the possibility of being able to reconstruct him. All right, our next piece is the Jowo Rinpoche, and that's the name of that. So Jowo means Lord, and then Jo Kang, the Kang means house. So the house of the Lord Temple, and Jowo, the Lord, and then Rinpoche is like a religious teacher. So our religious teacher Lord in the house of the Lord Temple. Okay, so that's basically what that translates to. And so what you're looking at here is a statue of the Buddha that is at a temple in Tibet. This is Tibet's earliest, most sacred, and most important Buddhist temple. In all of Tibet, it is considered their most important religious icon. And there, it was brought to Tibet in 641, 642 as a result of a marriage. When there was a marriage between religious families, and it is believed that this Buddha was made in India during the Buddha's lifetime, and it is believed to have been blessed by the Buddha during his lifetime. So it is a depiction of Buddha Sakyamuni. So again, the history of the Buddha. So it's Buddha as a young person, and it is believed that a woman from somewhere in the Indian royal family married someone in the Tibetan royal family, and as part of her dowry, she brought it with her when she moved to Tibet. And so that is how they believe that this image, which is believed to have been made in India, and is revered because it is believed to have been blessed by the Buddha himself, which is a big, huge, ridiculous deal, huge deal. And so it is believed that when that image, this statue, was part of the royal family, when she married Tibetan, that's how it came to be moved here. And because what we call chain of provenance is really important, how we get a piece that is believed to have been made in India and blessed by Siddhartha Gautama during his lifetime in India. How did this get to Tibet? The chain of what's called provenance, possession, has to be paid attention to. So this is a depiction of the Buddha Sakyamuni when he's 12. And what is interesting is when you look at it, it's very difficult to see exactly what is going on here. So you'll see that it says gilt metals. So metals that are made to be hammered down and to cover over wooden things, and then semi-precious stones and pearls and paint and various offerings. So I'm going to scroll and show you. Hold on, here we go. Hold, please. So this is what he looks like without all of the adornment. And so you see that his right hand is reaching forward to the ground. And his left hand is cradled sort of in front of him, so that and he's seated with his legs crossed. So that left hand is in that meditation position, and the right hand is touching the earth, which is called the earth witness. And so he's teaching and meditating. Okay, and we see here that without all of the things that he is covered in, it's easier to see. I'm so sorry. It's easier to see what exactly is happening. And then you see that he has this beautiful crown of semi-precious stones. We see some red carnelian, we see some blue lapis and gold. I'm going to move forward. So Bhumsvara is Bhumisparsha means touching the earth. And when he has the hand out touching the earth, it symbolizes that he sat underneath this tree and meditated for days and weeks. And while he sat underneath the tree and meditated for days and weeks, he was able to learn and teach right? And so that's why that hand, that earth witness hand, is really important. He is sitting under the tree. He is learning about the circle of karma. He is meditating, which is why that left hand is in his lap. And what you really see is he is beginning to achieve his enlightenment by talking to the earth goddess. And so that's really important. Okay. Where the way he's sitting, I have yet to figure out how to say this. I'm really sorry. And it's that cross-legged position that is most commonly used to depict Buddha. And it's this is the way that he sits once he has achieved enlightenment. So the body movements and the body shapes of the Buddha are important. Again, we'll talk more about that when we get into Southeast and Southeast Asia. So when we're looking at him with all of his adornments on him, he looks like this. Okay. And so when people would come to the Jokang temple, they would come and they would bring things to praise Buddha, kind of like we watched the reliquary of Sainte-Foy as those jewels were added. That's sort of how we should process this this statue of the Buddha with jewels and things, offerings given to him. Now, what's interesting is, and we will talk a great deal about the Cultural Revolution in China, but during the 1960 Cultural Revolution in China, this statue disappeared. It was taken from the monastery in Tibet, and it was broken into pieces. The lower part of his body was found in like literally in like a trash bin, like one of those big trash heaps in 1983 somewhere in China, and I don't remember where. And the upper part was found in the 1990s in Beijing. And in 2003, the two pieces were reunited to each other and then restored and everything. And so praying to this, and it was restored to Tibet. So praying to this iteration of the Buddha, the Jowo Rinpoche, people believe that it helps quicken the path to enlightenment. So if you are trying to break out of the karmic circle of life, death, and rebirth, that praying to and giving offerings to this particular statue of the Buddha can help you along your path to enlightenment, because he is the source of blessings, and because this one was blessed by him, you're more likely to be able to get the Buddha's intercession by praying to this particular statue of the Buddha. As I said, we will talk much more in depth about Buddhism as we get further into, this is the actual temple that Jowo Rinpoche is located in. And we will talk more about that when we get into our next Southeast and Southeast Asia, where we will talk more about Buddhism in more detail. Okay, so that's our video for today. I will see you again next time for West and Central Asia video 2, where we will begin talking about Islam. Have a good day, everybody.